SFJ 4x4 Studios presents
in my oversized four-wheel drive Jeep.
a Jeep podcast starring industry experts.
Pure monosity.
What? Say that again.
With mad scientist Scott Brown,
Use my drill press as a sort of lathe.
our host Neil Simpson,
If one light goes out, they all go out.
filled with shenanigans.
We are really professional with Jeeps.
This is I Speak Jeep.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever, however you are joining us. This is the I Speak Jeep podcast presented by SFJ4x4.com. My name is Neil with Simpson Family Jeeps, joined as usual with my esteemed, decorated, lovely, dapper colleagues today. Who's who?
I don't know. You go ahead, Jeff.
Go,
All right,
ahead,
well,
mate. I'm Barry White.
I'm Jeff, the Italian stallion,
The
Or-
Italian
as
producer
Italian producer on Instagram now.
on Instagram now.
And
Changed his
and
name last
sweater.
week. And he's got the cabbie hat and the nice sweater. Him and Jim Tressel would look swell together with each other. What
That
did
just
we
keeps
call
going.
that hat when we were younger?
Uh,
Remember, we used to wear them backwards though. That was the 90s.
yeah, that was cooler.
that was
You went from
Backwards. I don't know that I've seen these hats backwards.
what?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in an Italian family. They were worn properly.
Yeah, you probably were taken out back and beaten if
If
wore
you
it
put them on
backwards.
backwards, right?
right.
It's that cabbie hat, right?
You
And-
get fitted
and-
for cement shoes if you're not wearing your hats right.
Oh my gosh! And I'm trying desperately to think of what the heck we called those hats because we all wore them.
I wore mine backwards then.
Oh, you did or didn't?
I did.
Oh yeah, heck yeah, we did.
As a
right?
kid, I always called it the chauffeur's cap.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you had a logo on it. We were supposed to
Yeah,
wear them
the
backwards.
logo
at
was
that time.
on the back.
The logo was on the back, so you had to
Yeah.
turn around, so
Oh,
it ran to the front there.
That's a different style hat.
no,
No,
Yeah,
no.
it's a slightly different
Negative.
style hat.
it
That's-
is a slightly different.
It's a hard,
We're
solid
getting
form
into-
versus a softer form.
We're getting into
Oh,
semantics
geez.
over hats. Holy
Yes.
cow! Welcome to the I Speak Jeep. We're I Speak hats today.
our comment page, real quick. Good morning, guys, from Colleen.
Good morning, Colleen.
Good morning, gentlemen, from Chuck.
Yeah, Chuck.
And Brad is saying, Jeff, you can't work on dirty Jeeps in a dress shirt and sweater vest.
That's true.
You know
That-
what?
that is
These
true.
guys keep bringing the heat every day. I think it's funny. They come in and they've got nice clothes on just for you, our viewers and listeners.
Mhm.
And again, if you are listening on your favorite streaming platform, you could also join us live on Mondays, 10:19 or slightly thereafter on Facebook and join in the conversation. A lot of people say they enjoy the comment section.
Oh, Chuck's chiming in about the hats.
Uh-huh.
Must be a regional thing. We never wore those hats.
Yeah, you did, Chuck. I'm not gonna don't try to lie yourself. That was right after you took the fanny pack off and moved it from side to side. And you, sir, are the mad scientist.
Mad scientist Scott Brown, and today I'm trying to push the 5 into a shape to go to a show.
Yes, and people have been following along the beautiful hashtag Not a Restoration. What an amazing vehicle that Jeep is. We'll be headed to the Dayton Off-Road Expo this weekend,
One way or another.
one way or another,
That's for Ryan.
with or without Holly's help in the
Yes.
conversation.
Yeah, Holly's on my short list.
I was gonna say, I'm looking at you, Holly. I know what's happening here. So as much as we love their products, we are having to work through challenges that arise, with the world that we're living in at this time.
Yep.
But more importantly, if we were to talk about for our listeners, Scott's flannel,
Absolutely.
is just the most perfect shades of SFJ.
Yeah, it
and
is.
and he just looks incredibly handsome in the process. I will admit to you guys that my flannel, this is actually referred to as my lingerie flannel.
Oh.
I wasn't ready.
I know.
I'm not comfortable now.
I know. I know. It makes my eyes pop out. That's what
Yeah.
pop the color of my
The
eyes.
blue in the eyes.
I'll take her word for it.
I just
Yes.
realized all of us have blue eyes at this table.
Wow, okay, Jeff. If you weren't comfortable before, now I am uncomfortable. So
Oh, boy.
Well,
Isn't there
you
like
were
a Captain Planet reference in there somewhere?
Maybe, I don't know. But you were referencing the
I don't know.
way it
I
pops,
can't
and
wait.
That made me think of my wife saying the same thing about certain shirts that I wear. The blue in my eyes pop. And then I turned and looked. I'm like, oh shit. we
Way to
all
salve.
have-
Oh, he's cussing. He's cussing. He's so
I
uncomfortable.
apologize for Jeff.
Fantastic.
We've got
fantastic. We've started off with a lot of man love. on this episode,
I'm gonna have to bleep that out on the
Scott being Barry
censorship
White.
later. Chuck says SFJ branded flannels. What an opportunity.
Yes.
I'm surprised he hasn't done it yet.
And then-
we're going to.
Daddy Jeep is saying morning,
Morning, Rob.
and Colleen is saying bedroom flannel.
Oh yeah, you know what's up. So, and here's the thing: the branded flannels, I was all in around 19,
And then the world went crazy.
So honestly, I was at SEMA of 19, and there was another reasonably up and coming. They were working the Jeep scene heavily. They are also geographically in our area, and they also 100% stole a marketing idea of ours. Okay, so trifecta of information there, and
they
we're
were flanneled.
we're at SEMA together, and they had done a build that had used flannel inserts in their seats.
Yeah, that's old hat now.
And right, as old hat, but there was a big push, and I'm not saying that they were the only one. There was a beautiful big full size truck with yellow plaid interior, right?
Yeah.
This was different, but he literally showed up with a branded black and red flannel, and I had to take a deep breath
I've been
and be
there
like,
before.
and it was super cool. It was awesome. It was branded. It looked really cool, and he was very braggadocious, and it was like, oh,
Just a
look at
little
what I got going on.
bittersweet at the moment.
And I was totally bittersweet. Much like this past year, I was totally prepared to get us like funky Hawaiian luau shirts, and then I saw another group do that themselves, and I was like, I can't do that.
Can't do it now.
I can't do it now. I have to wait.
So we've got a couple more comments from Ryan now. Holy crap, flannels and sweater vests.
Sweater
He
vest.
put it in bold.
You gotta say it right. Sweater.
And he goes, Jeff out here looking like a Peaky Blinder. Well done, sir.
I'm telling you, folks, if you're listening in your ear holes, you got to get in on that on the visual.
It would
right?
be really cool. Flannel seat inserts and a Cherokee Chief.
Yes.
I just won't leave that there.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. Did you see that, Chief? I sent you
I
on
did.
Facebook.
That was 3 weeks ago. I'm sorry.
Oh, whoa. I'm late to the
Wow.
game, clearly. Folks, we're going to continue our conversation. We had promised you, a guest today. Unfortunately, they bailed at the last minute. That's okay. We're going to continue our conversation
do.
about antique XJs. That's right, pivot. We adapt and we overcome.
Absolutely.
And we're going to bring you a great show. And then as in our hashtag not sponsored section, we're going to be talking about some brands that I don't love. And specifically when it comes to batteries. And we'll expand upon that a little bit.
Ryan does want the flannel seats. He's saying yes, flannel seats all day.
No
of
doubt.
course.
No
Is there
doubt.
any other option?
So, if we can largely not talk about what are wearing or our attractive eyes, Jeffrey.
I didn't say they were attractive.
I don't know. You got real
Insinuating
uncomfortable, and you got real nervous.
We
on
went off
air.
the track.
And here I thought blue eyes were rare too.
Right?
We've derailed. We've derailed, and we're trying to get back on.
Is this actually part of the requirement to work here now?
Oh no!
Oh,
Oh
no.
no! I'm going to keep this. I'm going to try and keep this train moving forward because
Focus.
we could go way off
We're
track
off.
at this point.
It's gone.
So, as
Chuck
far as
wants
our
to stay
weekend-
out of Facebook jail, so he's saying let's avoid anything that may lead me to Facebook jail.
as far as our weekend is concerned, Jeffrey, how is your camper build that's going to take place in 3 weeks with no budget and
He was very optimistic this morning.
It's going good. It's going good.
Going
So
good.
I've got most of the deck is removed at this point.
We're
um,
looking at a trailer frame.
We're looking at a frame. I got a new plan on how I'm going to cut down the frame now that I can actually see
Sure.
what I'm working with.
sure?
Instead of, I was going to originally cut out where the slide out section is.
Yes.
That does not have to happen. I'm just going to, I have already removed the slide out at this point. It's gone. All I need to do is cut the back of the frame
Mm-hmm.
to one of the cross supports that matches what's currently at the back of the frame.
Okay.
And that'll be my new length. And then I just got to cut the bumper off and re-weld that on,
Okay.
reposition the axles, and we're done.
Then you rock and roll.
As far as
Camping.
Yeah,
Gonna
we're
be
camping. We're camping
We're gonna
right
be
there.
camping. On
So-
top of a steel frame.
Oh yeah.
and it was a beautiful weekend to be out and try to work on that. Unfortunately, I only got to work on it Saturday. Sunday, I spent the entire day in Erie.
Setting up your charitable event.
Yeah, we've got the big music event going on in Erie in April.
Mhm.
So I met with the owners of the venue, planned some things out, got some donations, messaged with people all day long that were trying to register for the event.
Yeah, his wife took his phone away.
She legit took my phone away at one point and said,
Yeah.
You're done for a little bit,"
Yeah.
because I was nonstop messaging for probably 8 straight hours at that point.
Wow.
And-
just this thing is this. So, and I'm going to give our listeners and viewers just a little insight to Jeffrey's background, and I'll do it just as a humble brag on him as an individual. And a little bit of just because it is bittersweet. Shortly before joining us in his full-time capacity, Jeffrey's cousin, who was a decorated independent artist and just a kind of a great cheerleader for many people in the indie music scene or arts scene in general, passed away unexpectedly. And at this point in time, his legacy is living on largely through a lot of those people that he touched.
Correct.
And there was a impromptu charitable event that happened last year, if I recall correctly.
So
right?
last year was for his birthday weekend. His parents approached me and said, "Hey, do you think you can put together an open mic on this weekend, just in memory of him? We can
Yes.
do some of his songs and play those through the system as well."
Right, and his name, because that's important
And
to
his
remember.
name.
No, what's his name?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Jason Heberly.
Jason Heberly, right? So
Yep.
that's important. We remember our passed on that way. So
Yes, and so I reached out to some of our close friends from that industry, and one person was hosting an open mic and graciously said, "Hey, I'd love to make this the memorial night for him." So we went in and kind of hijacked their regular open mic night.
Sure.
We had 70+ people show up for this. There
Mhm.
was no charity drive, nothing. It was just a night of enjoying singer-songwriters alike, and just a memorial type night.
Right.
Because of that turnout, his parents just a couple weeks ago reached out to me and said, "Hey, can you organize a charity event? We will supply cash for the prizes."
Mm-hmm.
And so my new side hustle that I have going is organizing this event, and planning
As much
that
as
out.
I want to harass you about 6 weeks, I fully support this one. And when I say 6 weeks, for those who are listening in or viewing in, joining in our conversation, we as internal talking points to SFJ 4x4, we often talk about people's interests in a 6 week intense, kind of foyer. So
All in.
all in for 6 weeks, right? And so oftentimes how often in our own lives do you reflect and go, I'm all in for 6 weeks, right?
Yes.
And you go,
And
I've
this
got
is
a new toy and I'm excited about it. As adults, kids, it's Christmas morning and then you're done and you're back to the packaging,
Right.
the paper and the boxes. But as adults, we'll oftentimes go all in for 6 weeks. We read about it, we learn about it, we fall down that rabbit hole, we watch the videos, we buy the accessories, and typically, unless it's one of our core activities, typically it tends to wane or fare from there. Not to say that this will ever do that for you, but this is a little bit of your current intense, what's taking a lot of your.
This
your-
is a
your-
designated 6
This
weeks
is
all
your
in.
designated 6 weeks all in. Fortunately, it will subside
Yes.
intentionally.
Intentionally, yep. So if there is any musicians out there that are interested in that event, it's in Erie at Oasis Pub, April 14th, and it's up on Facebook. You can search it.
Yep.
Jason Heberly's Memorial Open Mic Competition.
Yeah, there you go. So you spent a lot of time doing that, and
And then I ended the weekend at my parents' house for my mom's birthday.
nice. Oh well, yeah.
So I'm still
And-
messaging,
and
still
happy
messaging
birthday.
people while I'm at her
Oh,
house.
happy birthday, Mom. And I will take a moment to say that Jeff has been posting great pictures of his disassembly of the camper project, and so you can join in that conversation as well on his Instagram, and it is the Italian producer. And you're going to see a bunch of rotted pictures of rotted camper
Yep.
as he cuts it down and disposes of things and whatnot.
Yeah, I believe I put some of the pictures of what it looked like when I started, and there should be relatively updated to where it's at right now.
Yeah.
On there.
On just and I love following along. It's been fun to see because I'm apt to that. I'm interested in that. However, it does kind of break my heart a little bit because I had this really gnarly motorhome at one point, and I had to disassemble it, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. and I disassembled it with a forklift, and so it was this constant, ramrod into the side and rip things off, which was actually kind of
I
therapeutic.
pulled
and
out the
fun.
chainsaw at one point.
Yeah. I can definitely dig
Do
on
what you
that.
got to do.
Lots of sawzawing.
Yes.
Circular saw I've been using on the deck to cut out sections of the deck at a time.
Sure.
So
Yep. Good DIY stuff.
catching up on some comments. Daddy Jeep did say you guys are definitely rare.
Ah,
And then Dale said good day everyone. So
good day,
Good
Dale.
day.
Scott, any updates for you? Anything elaborate?
Yeah, so
The traditional 36 hot rod
Yep.
build?
I been slowed down a little bit, but I did get the heater core fixed on the car, and had my friend Bob assist me on that. Kind of got a little learning on how to solder. I've never done that part before, and I got
No. Well, hold on a second. That's and for our listeners, viewers, let's expand because we
never
solder
done
all the time.
Yeah, never done pipe soldering.
Right, we're pipe soldering. We're doing a
I'm
heater
not a
core
plumber.
pressurized. We're sweating basically,
yes.
right? The old
Lots
school
of sweating.
process. We
not
in
you,
the
Scott,
shop,
not you. That's the term
Yeah.
for the process.
we in the shop. We in the shop solder wires all the time.
Yes.
And these are different processes, and
100%.
it's important that people recognize that.
Yes. And and I was literally sweating because this is some weird round. Don't make it any more heater core that I don't really have a good second option going on
Right.
here.
If you botch this one, you're just SOL.
I'm kind of done, and I've
Yep.
already made the rest of the heater really pretty and cut holes in the car. So hoping for not that.
This is working a little backwards,
And,
if you will.
And I also got the car pushed out, turned around, and put back in.
Were
now-
there daylight pictures of it?
I haven't done any updates yet.
I was going to say, I did not
compiling.
see any daylight pictures.
Yeah,
I
I
bet
almost
you that would
did
be
this
fantastic.
morning.
Okay.
But I didn't get it all compiled, so it is coming.
Okay.
That's exciting.
So, but I did get it back in the garage, and now the driver's door is out into my less cluttered area,
Okay.
and I need to repair the door where the lower hinge attaches. Because
Yeah.
right now you open the door and the door drops. It's not actually the hinges; it's the door itself.
It's the door, or it's the weight of the door against the metal. Is that
Physical metal moves when you open the door.
right?
So
It's
bad
it's
juju.
it's canning. What's that called? Why can't
I think it's beyond. It was canning probably in 1970.
Oh, okay.
Now,
Perfect.
now it's cracked.
Ah. Oh, well then, this car is the metal work that the gift that
so it
keeps on
giving. And then I did find one more rust hole. The car I had said I'm done with rust, and the car was like, oh no. There was about a 50-cent piece on the driver's side, back where the back seat back attaches. So I'm going to take care of that while the car's around. And the other part of this plan is now the body is indexed properly with the A-frame and my Cherry lifting device or engine crane.
What? That was the most confusing,
Right?
Cherry.
But they were all legit words.
Yeah,
It was just
they were. It
out of
was
place.
The
I just
string.
forgot things.
It was
Anyway.
the string of that he put it together.
We're gonna be picking the body back up and rolling the chassis out for final paint and that kind of stuff. And that also involves cleaning a garage. So
Can I ask you a question? I can't. I
well, I
can't come
started
off
to
that.
panic because I was like, "Is that a proper terminology?"
Why
So I started down that path. I was like, "Back up and go the other way."
You didn't want to end up in Facebook jail for
No.
saying cherry picker.
Yes, I was like,
Could I offend somebody with the term cherry picker
Yes.
today?
so I was like,
I always hear you
"Bail."
call it bail. Bail. Run away. I always hear you call
Sometimes
it a
my-
Hoyer.
sometimes
Why
my
didn't you
mouth-
just call it the Hoyer?
Well, because the Hoyer is much smaller.
oh, this
That
is
won't
the
pick up
action-
the body, and I
Oh.
kind of injured that when I picked up a flathead with it.
I was gonna say you picked up the flathead, and that's heavier
Yeah.
than the body. I feel
Yeah,
like.
it's slightly twisted. Now.
Oh no! Oh no! Okay. So
Yeah,
this
we're
is...
up to a year of that wounding too. We hit that anniversary.
Oh,
Uh,
Bale! He got into cherry, and he just
sometimes my
word
mouth
vomited
doesn't
from
catch
there.
up. My brain catches up to my mouth. I'm like, oh.
So
Oh,
I have a
that's
question
spectacular.
though, because we were talking about the budget that I have self-assigned myself.
Yes. I remember when I had a budget.
I'm going to ask you: do you
As
have
he looks off into the world?
do you have some kind of estimate as to what this build has cost you so far, or what you expect the total build to cost you?
So I don't keep receipts. I learned that a long time ago. You don't want to know.
It's advice for our
But there's
listeners.
big chunks of money that have exited the bank account and have gone into the vehicle, and I'm able to use those chunks of money to know that I'm well over $20,000 at this point.
Okay.
And I don't want to know.
So do you know how much you originally paid for the car?
$6,500.
$6,500.
Yeah.
And your additional 20 into it, or is that including?
That
this?
includes the car.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's not
And
terrible.
it is valuable to know that in hindsight, you could go out and you could buy a runner, a driver for 26.
15.
15.
It's bone stock, but it has a nice interior and it has decent paint.
Right.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, much like we do with our Jeeps, we're oftentimes buying a dream. We're
Yes.
buying an idea. And that happens in life so long as you focus your ideas. And that's kind of why we talk about the DIY stuff, why we update. One, I think people find it fun. They constantly say, hey, what we want to know more about what you're doing and this, that, the other thing. We build Jeeps. We've built Jeeps. We drive cool Jeeps. We have those things. And we could talk about how we've built our own Jeeps.
Well, and as part of that conversation, Ryan is asking, what is this word budget?
Yeah.
Could you please use it in a sentence and provide definition?
It's an idea
It's-
of what you might invest in something that you then promptly throw away and just go about the business anyway.
It's the initial value that you tell your spouse that we're going to
Except
work
for she's
within.
wise of it at this point. She just says, "Go do what you're going to do."
It could be a he as well. I mean, we're just
Yes,
saying.
as long
Dale says it best. Whatever it is, it has a hefty multiplier associated with
a
it.
Yes.
hefty multiplier,
Yes.
no doubt. No doubt. I think Dale's in Sweden, isn't he? He's joining us from
he was
Sweden.
getting on an airplane yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought he was going to
Well,
Sweden.
maybe he
he-
stayed up late early.
Dale, are you in Sweden? And
Dale,
what time is it?
That's right. We're happy you're on air with us, but I'm curious now. So that's fantastic. Despite the fact that again we're not even gonna remotely talk about budget
Yeah,
with us
no.
because that's
Mm-mm.
my particular
Do
situation
not tread in those spots.
makes no sense
It is
whatsoever.
4:30. Is that a.m.? It's 4:30 is what he's saying. Yes, sir.
It should
4:30.
be 4 p.m. I think.
Is it 4:30 p.m.? Okay.
That's not too
Um,
terrible.
No.
So as far as in our situation, and again, I can talk about my wife because she doesn't watch this. So
I
so-
saw it was a whole group effort over the weekend.
oh, it was a great group effort, and honestly, I could talk about like the actual progress we made on the house itself, but that's really not what my wife gives a fig about. Outside of her family, the only thing she cares more about in the world is her garden and her
Yes.
flowers. Right.
I saw some things with thorns were thwarted.
Well, that was the bushes, right? Which
Yes.
I used. Let's be honest. I stole Jason's Jeep
Uh-huh.
and I used his winch to
Makes perfect
pull things
sense.
out of the ground. Right.
Well, you're just
Um,
testing it.
I was
Yes.
testing it, no
Yes.
doubt, and that
Well-
worn 12,000-pound synthetic line worked
Mint.
spectacularly, and
Yes.
it pulled the whole root bulb up and
Yep.
everything. It was
Been there,
awesome,
done that.
right? And I was good little tractor, right?
Yes.
Good little 2013 JKU R
It's
tractor.
perfect color.
And,
too.
and it's important for our listeners to know that Jason would let anyone drive
Jason
that
was
Jeep,
there.
and
Yeah.
he
He
was probably
approved.
there.
Prove
yeah.
this message.
So one of our employee wives drove it into a tree once, and he laughed about it.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
early
Maybe.
on in the very beginning, he tossed me the keys and was like, "Go break it," and I was like,
And then he promptly got it stuck.
"Well, I forgot about that part. So glad you reminded us."
No problem. That's what I'm here for.
All right, so I'm going to circle back to, despite the fact that, so what we did, we insulated 70-ish% of the ceiling, and it's spectacular, right?
Yes.
So cathedral ceilings. This is a tiny house-ish. Those who are listening in, it started out
It's a
as
Simpson tiny house.
yeah, right. It's a Simpson tiny house, and it
It's gonna
started
be on
out.
54s. At some point.
Our Patreons know what it started out as. They had questions regarding the fact that it actually looks a lot like an office trailer when we started.
We had another
Um,
subscriber yesterday, as a matter of fact, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Was that
Dan.
Dan? Yeah, thanks Dan for jumping on there. So you can see those pictures because we're not really releasing them to the public just yet. But in the process, because we're doing these, they're honestly 15-ish foot high cathedral ceilings in this tiny house. So we got all of that insulated. Fantastic. We have to run this special vent to allow airflow from soffit to ridge to our ridge cap, and that's going wonderful, right? But more importantly, I had to stepped aside from the fact that despite the fact that we need all this money to actually finish the house so that we can live in it,
No.
I am diverting a whole bunch of energy, effort, and resources into building a wildlife-proof raised bed garden system.
Yes.
And
They'll have lasers, right?
it'll have lasers. It'll have
Warning.
cameras.
Are we using axle crates?
axle? No, we're not using axle crates. Would make sense. No,
might-
these are
might
bigger
think
than
about
axle crates. So here's the thing, and I just want the scope and size to sink in, and we're just gonna have to pontificate on my wife's, yep, that sounds like Jennifer, right? That kind of thing. So my idea is they are 4 foot by 16 foot raised beds with
16 foot?
Have you seen her garden?
But why are we only going 4 foot if you're going 16 foot long?
Aesthetics.
because aesthetics, and you have to be able to reach across the garden.
Is there going to
here.
be multiple of them?
So there's going to be
Has to be.
8 of them.
Okay, that makes a little more sense
making
now.
a giant square-ish
A geometric design from above.
You
Yes.
need to make it a hedge garden maze style.
So here's
Don't
the
give her
thing.
ideas, Jeff.
So these
Listen,
and then
my brother's out there trying to source trampolines. He saw one on the side of the road on 97, and he goes, "Hey, there's one that's crumpled up on the side of 97. If he just needs the fabric, it's great." I said, "No, he doesn't need the fabric. He
need
needs the
the
frame." He's like,
frame.
"Oh, never mind."
there's one crumpled over here, like a couple houses down in the neighborhood, and I thought, how weird is it if I just show up and be like, "I see your trampoline has collapsed. May I procure that from you?"
Yes.
You know.
Ryan is asking, consider a greenhouse.
So that will happen.
That would make so much sense, Ryan. But we
That-
don't do those.
That's how you
things.
make it animal proof.
Yeah. Well, that will happen. No, here's the point, right?
We
We're
have
talking.
to build the greenhouse.
We have to build it all, right? So these raised beds. So
we
this
saw
was.
how much foam he uses. He doesn't really need a lot of glass.
I was
he could just put the
petitioning-
foam around the frame.
Listen, I was petitioning the queen with the prototype of this raised bed and going, I will build you a bunch more of these raised beds, all out of treated. We're not gardening vegetables, we're gardening ornamentals and so on and so forth. And then there's lattice, so the wall structure ends up being a little over 6 foot tall. Blah 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 blah. And she was like, I suppose it will do. And then I was like, okay, so
Wow.
no, it was good. It was well received.
You got this elaborate plan. I suppose it'll do.
Right. And she goes, well, that's not the permanent garden. And I'm like,
There it is.
oh, okay, that's fine. Everything's fine.
Yes, it's on fire, but it's fine.
It's fine.
Yes.
Yeah, so I started the process of this elaborate raised bed enclosure.
Just her response to the deer was the best part, where she's like, I really like the look at the deer, and I think they're cute, but I hate them because they eat my plants.
I will kill the deer if I could, with her own bare hands
Yes.
if she could get her
You
hands on them.
see this deer in the field, and suddenly you hear a rev up of a 3.6, and the Jeep jumps over and knocks the deer
Her
over.
JL just bounding through the acreage,
Yes.
ramming
Bam.
down deers.
We do not condone.
No, we
that.
don't condone harming the deer, folks. But if you see Jennifer and she's worked up in a lather and the
Yeah.
bumper's torn off, you will
Just
know.
walk away.
Just walk away. You will know what has happened and just move on with your day.
Ryan is saying they're delicious too, by the way. if you like venison.
Yes. All right. We should actually talk about antique XJs.
We should.
And
If I remember right, we were talking about the the oldest antique, the AMC era, and the French
the
tie-in.
oui.
Yes.
Um,
I
so
feel like Jeff is dressed appropriately.
we're just equal opportunity offending today. I don't know. I
don't even know how to react to that.
Bail. He said.
Your brain didn't catch up to that one there, I guess.
So, but just a quick
Wow.
refresher, folks. In the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, they have an antique insignia as part of
Yeah,
their.
but in Ohio too.
Well, we don't. We have historical in Ohio.
Yeah, still
Well,
25 years.
No doubt, but ultimately, in the great Commonwealth, it is actually called antique,
Yes.
right? And so ultimately, any vehicle that is 25 years and older is considered an antique. That means that dumpster of a 4-door or 2-door unibody constructed XJ
With no rockers.
with no rockers, but just all the yee horsepower of
Yes.
your 4.0. Is technically an is technically it is an XJ. It's technically, but it is technically an antique.
Yes.
And so
for 65% of them.
65% or so of them. And so that's really what we're talking through is we're chronicalizing.
Okay, Scott.
Right? Chronological order? I
Yes.
don't know what words I was looking for.
So we were
there.
up to about 1990. So that brings us into
the
It's
HO
contagious.
era.
the HO era, which started in 91. And that's
Yes.
when Chrysler really was like, why are we still using this French fuel injection
Right.
when we have our own system?
Yes.
And they came in and the vacuum lines parted.
The vacuum lines parted.
And they got like somebody, I just see an old man just ripping things off. We don't need that. We don't need that. We don't need that. And suddenly there was like, oh, and there was a simple engine bay
Yes.
and it just ran.
Uh-huh.
And somebody in the interior
We
hadn't
opened
got
up the
memo.
cooling system. The cooling system was now
Yes.
a
That
standard
was part of what
radiator.
went over his shoulder.
Yeah, now Bubba knew actually how to work on this radiator because
Yes.
it wasn't a closed system.
And the person that was doing the interior didn't get that memo. And they left the comfort and power transmission switch for 1 year.
I love the comfort power
Yes.
transmission switch.
And I also love, it hasn't happened in a while. It just shows the age of these Jeeps. But there used to be a post weekly. I tried it and it didn't do anything. Yep.
yeah.
You just always put it on power because you felt like it gave you 3 extra horses.
Because that's it. Just mine just lived on power.
Yes. What was comfort for? I have
So-
no idea.
So interesting. There was just some really cool. Again, we're talking about these XJs, and we're talking a period of time in the late '80s, where there was a number of things between the Cherokee and the Comanche platforms that was really, honestly, above or ahead of its time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So the self-leveling packages of the Comanches,
Mhm.
and then the comfort or power button for the automatic transmissions. Ultimately, all that was, folks, was basically it was a really rudimentary, whether you had more aggressive shifts or softer shifts, ish.
Yeah.
It's basically like the sport mode now kind of thing.
It was a thought.
It was a thought,
right?
right?
It was a.
It was that, but
the
that same
entrance to
idea-
It was a semblance of choice.
yes, and so how often are our auto manufacturers still giving us this? This option where it's like, oh, I'm going to go rock climbing today, and
Yes.
I can dial that on my Grand
I-
Cherokee.
Right.
Actually, I was watching the Bronco Sport commercial. I just shake my head every time because going, through your field
Yes.
and there's a rock, and they're like, "Oh, I gotta go to rock mode."
Yes. Yes.
No, you
Yes.
don't.
Yes.
I'll
And
go flex my wife's Outback on that rock.
just the same, right? And you're 100% right. So I mean, we have those things now, and that was the semblance of choice, the
Yes.
semblance of compatibility. What did it actually affect? Very little.
Yes, but they also made the
Typically, was
line
problematic.
simpler. I feel that we just went from having multiple marks in the same body. We went to just having trim levels. 90% of people, I swear, bought a Sport they were everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
There seemed to be a lot of red and black ones.
Well, the Pioneer was also a cool trim package.
It was, but it was not like everywhere like the Sport was.
Sure.
And then you had the Country package.
Yes,
Yep.
which was green and tan most of the time.
Most of the time. Yep. I was always going for the Sport with the gray interior if possible.
Of course, you were.
Yep.
So so we have the old days of AMC and Peugeot, and now Chrysler.
And it's ran over the AMC parts with the bulldozer.
Just ramrodded it, tried to get rid of it as much as possible. So the exterior doesn't change so much, but
slight
gone.
changes. Snobs like me will know the difference.
Absolutely, but
Yes.
gone are the days of the pathetic V6
Yes.
or the
Distant memory.
or the 2.5 of incompatibility with
Yes.
other application.
Yep.
At this point
The
in time,
two-piece axle shaft went away.
the two-piece axle shaft. We had what's called and this is interesting, JL owners, as I'm looking at you, they had at that time what we called a CAD,
Yes.
which was center axle disconnect,
And it was-
which was garbage.
Yes. And they got
And
rid of it,
They got rid of it,
thankfully.
JL owners.
Yes. Now it's a fad.
Now there's a fad, and I wish that
It's not a fad, though.
It's not. It
No.
needs
It
to
should
go
be.
away. It needs to
And
go
amazingly,
away.
they now make kits that reminiscent of those kits.
The same kits,
So
right?
get rid of those.
We got rid of all those CADs back in the day. It was the same exact thing. It was this idea that we were saving wear and tear on parts
Yes.
and fuel mileage by disconnecting the long side axle shaft.
Yes, and everyone
with a
tried
collar.
it. Ford tried it, GM tried
Yep.
it, Chrysler tried it, and realized they did bad things. And
It's just one
Fix
more
things.
thing to
And-
be a pain in the butt.
And Jeep's like, hold my beer. We're going to bring it back and do it again.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's still not going to work.
Yeah. It's going to break the axle at the fad, the whole
Yes.
shooting match. So,
Oh, and the
so here we
corrosion
are.
that builds up in there now.
Yes, the corrosion because bimetal differences.
it's always a fun time.
So by 91,
Yep.
we are into the HO era.
Yep.
And what does HO stand for our listeners?
High output. We're at
Horsepowers.
We're at 190 horses.
Woo!
We're up from 180. I think it was 87 or so, or something like that with the other one. We still have a Comanche for DOS years. We have
Yes.
a 91 and a 92 Comanche. If
Yep.
you're lucky enough to have an HO Comanche, guard it with your life
Yes.
and keep the tin worm away.
Mm-hmm.
And then 93 was kind of a lackluster but normal year. And then same with 94. And then 95, federal mandates came up and said, you must have an airbag.
Mm-hmm.
And
By 96, though, I thought.
well, and Chrysler, like most things, was like, well, we see you. We can do this.
Yeah. Or will eventually do
Yes.
this. Right.
And so they retrofitted a mechanical airbag into the 95, but kept it OBD1.
Yes. So the federal mandates at that time were moving towards a number of standardized safety and manufacturing processes.
Yep.
And we still are dealing with some of this right to repair stuff, which may or may not have crested our listeners,
Yes.
their radar yet.
And this has all happened before.
Yes, it's all happened before, and we're living through it in the 90s here, and now the federal government's coming out with, hey, you got to have airbags.
Yep.
And
You have to have an OBD2 monitor.
you have to have an OBD2 monitoring
Which,
system.
for those that don't know, that's a standardized plug and placement. Before that, it was the Wild West. You had a Chrysler plug, a GM plug, a Ford plug, and they were anywhere from underneath the dash to by the headlights.
And that's ultimately, if you go into your Jeep right now, on most of our Wrangler platforms, it is going to be right where your left foot goes in the driver's seat.
Yep.
Just up at the dash. If you are a JL owner, and you've installed like a taser, you've had to go through your security bypass.
Yep.
Install a little module up in there. Now that security bypass, and we'll get around to talking about this. That actually has started us down the slippery slope of right to repair issues.
Yes.
And the fact that you even have to put a security bypass in there, it's because the mothership is constantly monitoring your data
Accessibility.
service and the things that have the codes and information that the Jeep throws all gets monitored back
But
at
we'll
some point.
wind the track back, and we're
Yep.
back in 1996.
Yep.
And for a while,
Back to the Future style.
yes, they thought that, well, we'll give you OBD2, but we're going to make it so that you have to have our scanner to talk to it. And there was a big court case about it, and a bunch of cars had to go and get reflashed to allow you to use a generic scan tool. My dad had a 96 Buick Century wagon, and he literally had to take it in and have it flashed so that we could scan it. And it was many years later.
And that's the thing. They said, hey, we see you. We're going to give you that physical port
Yes.
under the dash. But that's the
You
only
can't
thing.
touch it.
But you still can't touch it.
So, and that means in 96, we had a 1 year only. Still had an
Odd.
airbag.
Odd duck.
Yes.
And
Which is
what
why I
did you,
owned one.
Which is why you owned one.
Yes. And
You
it
had
was,
to go out and buy the worst production.
It was an OBD2, but old body XJ.
Yes.
And I loved it so.
You did love it. So fortunately, it's still sort of in the Jeep family.
It is.
Owned by one of our
The
good
collector.
customers. The collector.
Yes.
Owns it.
He collected
it. And it was a
And
really
speaking
cool.
of budgets, that whole money of all that went into my 36.
Yeah. Yes. And you lost a lot of money on that particular build as
Oh,
well.
buddy.
We never come out alive from
but
our
Kevin
projects.
appreciates it.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. So here we are. We've got the Jeep, and it looks a lot alike. You've got the traditional 6-cylinder 4.0
Yep.
high output engine, and you also have the standard 2.5
Yes.
You
For
know,
the ones that just didn't check the right box.
the ones who didn't check the right box.
You could get sadness and extreme disappointment.
In
as
a
an
Cherokee.
option.
As an option.
Yes.
Typically,
And it hauled goats well.
and it hauled goats exceptionally.
Yes.
Illegal
Yes.
Russian
There's,
goats.
There's a story there.
Um,
Well, that's for a later time.
I kind of want to know this story at this point,
That's
but we
later.
can.
Later time.
illegal Russian goats.
In a very-
NAXJ.
Were they fighting bears? I mean, I know that's what the
maybe.
Russians like
no,
to do.
they were mating secretly with American goats as.
Yeah. You ever showed up somewhere and somebody wants to share, and you're like, "Why are you sharing this with me?"
so
I
much
could
sharing?
I could be like, I don't know what the
Who
animal
regulates
right goats.
animal importation rights?
I could be that person. I could work for them, and you're just
Can
sharing.
you imagine what you have to do to collect Russian
And then get it
embryo
into the
and
country?
and semen and to bring that into the country
Yes.
in an
We
XJ?
had so many questions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
So yeah, that's
was very- it was
in
very-
the 2.5 XJ.
it was very
that's-
rotted and lots of hay in there.
You know what?
We had-
I think we're getting far enough down that rabbit
Yeah.
hole that I'm good to move
Yep,
on.
Yep. That was an
It was
excellent.
honestly, I think it was early on in that conversation we found it. We're like, it does exist a 2.5 XJ.
It was 5-speed.
It was a 5-speed.
And
As
it had
if you
410.
had to check this extreme disappointment box,
So listen, it was
There's-
actually a cool Jeep. It was 2 doors.
that's
was-
Neil speaking.
It was
there.
it was 2 doors. It was a 2.5. It was a 5-speed with 410 axles. That's not a bad Jeep. Now the problem
He's only
is
saying that because it was rare.
yeah.
well,
The
that's
only part of that Jeep I was
little
excited about was the front drive
the
shaft.
illegal Russian goat
No,
embryos.
and the front drive shaft,
Okay.
which I promptly stole and put in a project.
Yes.
Ugh.
So so
course
here
you
we
did.
go with our antique XJs as we continue to push through. That was our HO era, and
Yes.
despite the fact that the motor really doesn't change going
No.
into 95, 96, 97,
Slightly.
I would say that 91 to 95 is defined as the HO era,
Yes.
right?
At least with
And-
us, and that's what matters right now.
Well, of course it does, right? Of course it does.
Yep.
Yeah.
So by 97, right? So it's important to note we have all this federal gobbledygook happening in the world where we've
Yes.
got, regulatory processes with OBD2 and airbags and,
And
so on and so
people are
forth.
crying that the XJ is old.
Yes.
It's not meeting its market
And
anymore.
it's also important to note that Chrysler at the time saw the Wrangler platform as basically unsalvageable.
yes.
They had released in '87 the Yuppie Jeep
Yes.
or YJ.
Yep.
I see you, Rob Morgan, and square headlights is really what that Wrangler comes
and
down
they
to.
deemed it not suitable for retrofitting OBD2 systems.
Ultimately, yeah,
and airbags.
enough people did not buy
And-
them
and a
to
certain
grocery get.
People rejoiced.
Yes. Now I had an '87 as my first Jeep. I love YJs
sorry.
desperately, and ultimately because it was such a terrible vehicle, I think that's why this business exists today.
100%.
And
And that's why when you bought another one, you bought a 95.
that's why I bought a '95, which was the last of the production run because
Yes.
at that point in time, Chrysler said, as you just said it best, they deemed it unretrofittable.
They weren't filling the square headlights.
Daddy Jeep's giving us a
And-
big thumbs up.
and and ultimately they said, hey, we're just going to kill the. And at that point in time, they teased us as an industry, as a community, as a culture, and they're like, the Wrangler's really not relevant anymore. We're
Yes.
just going to kill it,
Yes.
and everybody
And everyone panicked.
panicked.
Yes.
Could you
Meanwhile, the
imagine this
XJ
world
owners-
if they would have ended it at that point?
Oh, I
They never would
can't.
have done that.
I can't, but I'm with you.
Chrysler
right?
would have went under.
And well, the XJ would have saved it. The
Yeah.
the great traveling
for some
dumpsters.
reason, that made sense to retrofit for 1 year.
Right. They retrofitted it for 1 year, and then
Yeah.
they said, we're going to update it. We're going to give it an interior update.
Yep.
And at the same time, they released the TJ Wrangler in '97.
Yes.
So in '97, our
Money
four-wheel
was just
drive.
flying out the back door at Chrysler. they had completely scrapped the whole line. They basically went in and they cleaned out the whole production plant.
Oh, they were relying on the Grand Cherokees.
Yes.
They're steady.
yeah.
Grand
Yeah.
Cherokee wasn't. That was unchanged. so
Oh.
'97, we've got a new Cherokee and a new Wrangler, but the Cherokee's really not that new.
No, it's
So
it's
what do we got
refreshed.
going on the Cherokee?
So we have a curved front fender
streamlined
and-
aesthetics.
and grill for air flowing over it.
Do you remember when we wanted to grab all the new
Yes.
body XJs
and put them on our
retrofit-
Comanches?
Put them on our
It was
Comanches.
so cool.
God, I hate that. Man.
Yeah, right?
I would love to have a clean
and
Comanche.
there was this contention about cup holders, and you don't know what I'm talking about unless you
Oh.
owned
Oh,
a 95 or 96 and older Jeep.
yes.
We had the crappiest cup holders.
We had to
ever.
walk uphill both ways to school
Oh, there it is.
in our shorts
If you ever
while
seen,
holding our cup
Yes.
and
Ugh.
shifting in our manuals or our power comfort button.
and there was two options for cup holders. There was this one that clipped on the side of the console that when you put your drink in it, it promptly dumped it on the passenger
Mhm.
side floor,
Yes.
which is you wonder why there's stains. That's why.
Yep.
And then you promptly threw that out the window, and that's why they don't exist anymore.
Yes.
And then they put another one up on the console, which in theory was great, but it was this deep. It was a quarter of an inch deep.
No, you couldn't put a cup in there.
So unless you were carrying a can of pop or soda, pick your demographic.
Pick your demographic.
That's the only thing that fit there. And then
And then
your,
it's
Even
still-
then, if you took a turn, it was tipping over.
and your e-brake was completely obliterated at
Yes.
that point. You could not use it anymore.
No, and
And
then
those broke all the time.
they broke all the time. Cheap plastic.
Yeah.
I still, we get a customer in every once in a while, and they have that in there,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, oh dear God, like please don't let us break this because there's no
Yes.
way to replace it
Yes.
at this point.
Yep.
You treat it with.
Remember
your
when you had to retrofit the mirror switch from the console up into it? There
Yes.
was this little knockout for it because you couldn't get the it either.
No,
So they were really excited about cup holders in '97. They decided to do the console
it really
different.
was the dark days. The 80s, the 70s to 90s really were the dark days of cup
Yes.
holders,
So suddenly we had Dose cup holders, and we were ecstatic.
and they were deep.
And they were
right?
deeper.
They were
Yes.
deeper down, and they were low center of gravity, not
Yes.
high,
Made so
where
much
my
more
elbow
sense.
was going to knock them
And
off.
then instantly, everyone with an older Cherokee wanted to retrofit that, and there was all these how-tos, and you're moving your e-brake over, and all this
Mhm.
other garbage. And then they went on to the dash and the seats, and you name it. The hatch, important to note, from '96 back to '84 was fiberglass.
Mm-hmm.
That was a love-hate thing.
Yes, because if you got rear-ended, it was you were
It was
out of luck, man.
Instant. So Chrysler put a steel one on there, and then the tin worm instantly liked that.
Mm-hmm.
Darla just chimed in and said good morning.
Good morning, Darla.
Obviously, the taillights changed a little bit with the gate, but other than that, the main structure didn't change. Yes, there was some reinforcements added and taken away and moved around and that kind of stuff, but for all intents and purposes, nothing really changed with
Right.
the main body structure.
And ultimately, we see some wiring, changes that happen. 1997 in of itself has its own wiring harness.
Yes.
We
We actually just had a customer come in and say, why would they put the fuse box there?
yeah. And
And I thought, that guy's retired that you're mad at.
I hope he's retired.
Yes,
if
he should.
That,
He
right?
deserves to be retired.
Yes. And so 97 had their own wiring harness unto themselves. 98, 99. At this point in time, we have really good front axles. It started with the HO era by 91.
Yep.
By 97, we actually get a big U joint
Yep.
out of them. So better yet, a high pinion Dana 30.
Yep.
We're
We're in
not
the
a bad
golden
axle.
years of the high pinion 30.
Correct. We are in the golden years. So 98 and 99.
Get ready for
Great
the rug to get
axles.
pulled out from under us.
just sucker punched.
Yes.
As Chrysler goes, you know what? We actually don't have the money that we
Well,
thought we had.
So the story I've heard on the street is that they only intended like 99 to be kind of the end of the Cherokee, and they were going to bring out what became the Liberty, and everyone outcried, and there was big mass. They got their flags and their pitchforks out, and they were upset
Mhm.
all across America.
Yes.
I don't remember it, but it seems like it happened.
It seems like it.
And all the people wrote letters, and for some reason they decided to listen for the first time ever,
Yes.
and they made a 2000 and 2001, but they said, there's a problem.
Uh-huh.
We don't have any more high pinion 30s.
We got no money.
and we got no monies because we spent it all on the TJ. We haven't recovered yet.
Yes. and we're at this point in time spending it on we're getting ready for we are building the Grand Cherokee, right?
Yes.
So we have that new
We've
Dub J.
realized that the Grand is actually not that good. We need to do something.
We
about
need to
it.
do something about it. The Wrangler is hot as can be, and
Yes.
we're spending a ton of money on development of that.
Yep.
And they wanted to kill the Cherokee for a period of time because, quite frankly, at that time, the Cherokee didn't fit in the market.
Yes.
It was not cool like it is cool.
Yes.
Well, it's arguably
Now
not
it's
cool
retro.
right now, but now it's retro.
Yes.
At that time, people hadn't got onto it like this is a good off-road vehicle. This was just as far as the portfolio that Chrysler was looking at. This was just like what are we doing with this vehicle?
Yes.
Right.
You know, we have the Grand and we have the Wrangler, and that's what they thought. They needed a new, more affordable, and quite frankly, they were trying to target a different population with
Yes.
the Liberty,
Yeah.
which, if you can recall, like a 2002 Liberty, it's very
terrible.
Other than that,
Joe Brilla and Linda are going to be
I
all
know.
over
I
you.
know, but
They have wheeled
I'll
all over Moab in their Liberty.
I'll tell you what. For that purpose, sure, but the
Purpose,
the,
sure.
what?
the overall design of it
Come on
was
now.
just a very poor design, and they
just-
could have
you
done
just-
so much better.
You
with
wheel
it.
your Liberty, you blow the head off, you put it back on, you go about your business. you
Yeah,
know?
and the thing is, it was very round. It was
Yes.
kind
It was
of
bubbly,
bubbly looking.
and
it kind of looked like
had
a
no
bubble.
no visibility for backing up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's that's.
But
that's
they
fair.
eliminated the square from the lineup.
They were trying to
once and for
eliminate
all.
the square. That's exactly what they were doing. They were trying to kill the square.
Yes.
I want to know who killed the square. I want to know what individual at Chrysler was sitting around the meeting every day, went in.
Somebody probably
was like-
retired and they're like, well, now that Frank's gone, we're
Now
just
that
getting rid of the
Frank's
square.
We're getting rid of the square.
Yes.
So marks the little bit of the I don't know the dark years of the new body Cherokee 2001. We end up with a low pinion axle,
Yep.
which is what we see produced all the way through in the Wranglers.
Yep.
Why we had high pinions in Cherokees and low pinions in
I'll
Wranglers,
never understand.
we will never know.
Yes.
But that is the reality situation. So instead of retooling or buying more high pinions, they just move the Wrangler axles over, use them under the Cherokee.
Yep.
And then because also federally happening in the mid-late 90s, NAFTA happens.
Yep.
So now we're seeing this big, and this is kind of
More
existentially,
O2s, more catalysts.
and we're seeing both production go to other countries, and then we're seeing higher regulatory processes. We end up with a really crummy head
Yes, that cracks instantly.
that cracks instantly,
Yep.
and some other questionable
It's
manufacturing
not like we've been making
tolerances.
straight sixes, since 1963. We completely forgot what we were
Well,
doing.
right, because we shipped them out to Brazil at that point.
Yes.
We shipped them out to a foundry in Brazil, and ultimately seemed like the Cherokees, mainly because Cherokees have
The
higher
worst cooling
underhood,
system.
the
in
worst cooling system. It's about this big.
Yes.
It's
It's in a engine bay.
tight
It was
little
never
engine
designed
bay.
for the motor.
right. It's in a tight little hot engine bay,
Yep.
and so the heads crack religiously on them. Now they
Yep.
cracked on the Wranglers as well because they're the same heads.
Yes.
But-
and the Dub J's.
And the Dub J's, but ultimately the Cherokees just simply were worse. They were more
Yes.
known for it because of the heat buildup and
And,
tolerance.
and if you don't know what
issues.
we're talking about, you haven't wheeled unless you've taken a Cherokee break. You
or
wheel until the temperature gauge gets to a certain point. You just stop, shut it off, get a snack, talk to your friends.
yep, perfect.
You open your hood while you do this,
You open hood.
and then you just keep going over. Yep, she's still warm. We gotta talk some more. Okay.
I've 100% wheeled with the hood open. You
Yes.
know what I mean? Just
That's
2 or
standard
3
issue.
inches. Standard.
That's as the gauge crests 210.
I
you just
remember
go
years
kink.
ago being on the CB, being like, "Oh, I had to pop the hood, guys." You know what I mean?
It's coming. The Cherokee break is imminent.
Cherokee break.
You
I
know
have-
what else is going to be considered antique since we're talking about CBs?
Oh, CB.
Why'd you have to do that, Jeff?
Wow,
Right
Jeffrey.
here, Jeff.
I know,
That-
but
that
it
is-
is.
that
It's
hurts.
antique at this point.
Oh,
It
Jeffrey,
hurts.
stop saying mean things to us. So, and then I also recall having to drive home with the hood. You know what I mean? Just
Yes.
not 50 miles per hour,
No.
but leave the hood open so that I
That
can get
safety
home.
catch was awesome.
When you're
Yeah.
installing a lift kit on your hood.
Yes,
well,
so
that was a thing.
I
that
know.
was a thing. They actually had shims. You would
Yes.
buy the shims,
Small shim.
small shim, and you would shim open the hood to allow the heat to dissipate.
I
off
feel
of
like
the
we
engine.
cannot say that without saying LeBaron hood vents.
Oh,
Chuck is saying, used to do the Gambler 500 with one of my sons in his XJ. Couldn't believe how often that thing overheated.
constantly. That's just part of
Yes.
wheeling an XJ.
Yes.
That's why at this point in time, very few good high dollar builds in XJs are regularly wheeling anymore. And that's just the unfortunate challenge. We built some really over the top XJs.
Yep.
Um,
You know what's sad? Is this is a little insider information. Greg's got the nicest 99 XJ you want to talk about, and it's got a V8 swap. And you would say, oh, well, the 4-liter's got heating problems. The V8's got to be way worse. Nope.
mhm.
It's way better.
Yep, the V8's actually better.
It's
And,
cooler.
it's just the functionality of the engine itself,
Yes.
right? The efficiency and how it, what it creates heat or not, right?
Yep.
And that's, I think, part of the issue. If we're just being very realistic with our big XJ builds of the years past, when somebody would put in, tens of thousands of dollars into a build, you really don't want to have this beautiful XJ and then be like, okay, guys, well, I'm going to sit on the side of the road over here and
have a
wait
Cherokee brake.
and have a Cherokee brake.
Right.
All of a sudden, all these JKs were just wheeling by in almost
Yes.
stock fashion.
Yes.
And, customer.
With tires bigger than you could put on.
Yeah, with tire. You got 8 inches on your Cherokee to get 35s.
It's so much hacking happened.
And, a JK rolls by on 35s and 2.5 inches.
Yes.
Um,
Which is why I have a JK now.
which is why you have a JK now,
With
for
a
sure.
permanently installed top.
You are just at your heart, a XJ owner.
Yes.
Now, I think that we would be remiss, without talking about antique XJs, to indicate what was your first Jeep and why.
A 93 XJ that was black. It was a sport because at that moment I didn't think anything else existed.
Mm-hmm.
I was an AMC guy, like hardcore, and I was such an AMC guy. This shows how much of a dork I am. I took the armrest off my 93 XJ, and you could see the AMC stamp, and I got a little giggle. Oh, look, it's still an AMC.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
My first Jeep was a 2002 Liberty. That's why I can say that I don't like it.
Oh!
That's what happened. The 3.7 touched him.
The Liberty. I feel like
You had
I feel like we're in
problems, didn't you?
confession at the moment. Oh my god. Oh my god.
I feel like I need to go to confession to explain this one.
Oh, you had an O2 Lib.
Uh-huh.
How many heads did you go
Oh.
through?
He
Listen,
probably
it just was a bad experience all the way around. it just wasn't good.
it was closing call and
My-
the lights were off when you first
My
went
next
home.
my next Jeep was an 04 Grand. So
Okay.
Slightly better.
Slightly
it was better. It had the V8 in it.
Okay.
Oh.
Oh,
yeah.
that's neat, Jeff. It was
Yeah, I said
4.7.
slightly.
That was
Slightly.
a 4.7. That's garbage too.
It
That's
was.
a 3.7 just lengthened out.
I was gonna say it's just a little bigger of a 3.7.
Yeah.
Um,
I learned.
my first XJ was a 89.
Yes.
Remix.
You have to do everything the hard way.
Oh, the hardest ways as how I live my
Because
life.
I would have never upgraded if I was driving an 82 Concorde before I got my 93 XJ
I love the fact that you were a 20-something-year-old
in a 4-door Concorde.
in a Concorde. Just so let people
And-
let that sink in.
And
right?
we had a really odd, awful cherry bomb muffler on it that when you nailed it was quiet. When you let off the gas, it made this
had all the
god-awful
back
noise.
pressure. Had all the back pressure baffles.
So it sounded, yeah, it sounded horrible. Thank God my
Oh.
wife still,
Yes, your wife. That she is who she is.
yes.
So my 89 XJ, and that's ultimately what again started me down the trail with what SFJ does, and I wanted the best out of these garbage Chrysler AMC abominations,
Yes.
and I was constantly pursuing making either one. And it's important to note that I owned the 87 YJ and the 89 XJ at the exact same
busy.
time.
So
Full for punishment.
Brad Davis just chimed in and said, I also started with an 02 Lib. No head issues, but the transmission imploded.
Oh yeah, that too.
And
That's given.
And then that was ultimately why we got rid of ours. Chuck says muffler was mounted backwards.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Probably in Scott's situation, right?
Yeah.
Blah 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 blah. After it comes out. Oh my gosh, folks, we want to hear about your first vehicles. Not that we were talking about it today, but this was a fun trip down
Yeah.
memory lane.
Well, and
'Cause-
that's going to be an upcoming episode. We want to talk about how you got into Jeeping. What was your first Jeep? So send us those stories.
Yeah, totally. You can reach out. You can email Jeff for production purposes. Jeff JEFFC at sfj4x4.com. I mean, I suppose you could be non-production issues and just, talk about eye color and sweater vests together
Yeah,
if you really wanted
yeah.
to.
You
if
get
you really wanna
bonus
do that.
points if you got some pictures of that cool ride back in the day.
That's, oh my
Oh,
gosh, we would
absolutely.
love to see people's
Yes.
first
We,
vehicles.
we might be able to blow the dust off some pictures. I got some matching black.
We'll all talk
Sport
about our
XJs.
antiques. We'll all talk about our antiques in that regard. You can also text us on our text-only number, which is 440-855-2100. Again, 440-855-2100. That's a text-only line. We're going to transition to hashtag not sponsored, and we're going to talk about some batteries that I don't like.
And now it's time for our product spotlight.
Hashtag not sponsored.
Spotlight.
Hashtag not sponsored.
So where have the batteries touched you?
Where and this is a shout out to Jason, because he was a little frustrated that
Never.
that his Jeep decided to just immediately behave for us,
Yes.
right?
So the big off-road recovery video and all of that was for what reason?
it was for a battery.
A battery.
A battery, and he's like, man, I feel like such a bonehead because like it was a battery. Here's the problem. Jason literally took it to a reputable box auto parts store, and when I say reputable, I just mean they're on every corner in everybody's town.
Right.
And that, Jim Bob came out from behind his counter and he hooked up their battery tester and he said, hey, this battery's good. That's not your problem, right?
Yep.
So there's the
Pseudo professional.
yeah. So there's your complete and absolute transparency of what his particular situation was. Now, when we went down there, I think I took our jump pack, but I genuinely don't remember the first time around. I do factually know
You
that
were
I took.
quickly distracted with the international not behaving.
No
itself.
doubt, and of course, operating under the pretense that he had it checked prior to it parking.
Yes.
And the fact that, and this is important to note for our newer vehicles, he had interior lights, he had a horn.
Didn't you use the winch?
We used the winch. We did. I did piggyback a battery off of it eventually, but we used the winch.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
And so-
all of that's amazing considering the fact that when it came into the shop and Greg went to check the battery and it was a stone.
It was
Like,
dead
it
as a
was
doornail.
just
Well,
gone.
It had its last hurrah.
Right.
No doubt.
Getting on the truck.
Correct.
So here's the thing, and I'm gonna totally put a couple brands out there because, quite frankly, they need to do better. And I'm gonna say AC Delco batteries.
We see you.
We see you.
Yep.
And Interstate batteries. I'm coming for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I've been touched by an interstate battery before.
we could have it like a hotline we should set up for has Interstate
Has
batteries.
interstate touched you?
Have you been sold an Interstate battery from your local trusted mechanic, and then you were dead on the
Promptly
side of the
dead on
road?
side of the road. Yes.
Come to our IB support group.
Yeah, yeah. So and factually, I have a daily driving car, which some people are familiar with. But I have the 2001 Nissan, my noble steed.
It's currently wounded.
Of a sedan, which has trailer lights for lights and a hitch on it and all that kind of stuff. I literally got that car for free because a relative
was
of mine, because the battery's junk,
Yes.
and he's not automotive.
Yep.
And he kept going back to the Interstate battery store, and they kept swapping out junk battery, and then the battery would die. And it has nothing to do with the car.
Yep.
He was totally convinced the car had a short because that's what the battery store told him.
Yep. And what kind of battery did you put in it? And it's been a
Well-
faithful steed since.
No, see, this is where this is.
I thought you would put the AGM in.
I
there.
did put an AGM in there.
Yeah.
I have an AGM battery, but that is a Delco, right? And
Oh.
so while I am here, standing on my soapbox,
Yes.
I
I will say
the
that
construction of AGM is different.
since 18 on, we all know what happened. Batteries seem to be impacted pretty severely with that because not just some of these brands we're throwing around, but Subaru has literally a class action lawsuit against them about batteries. Dying, my wife's 17, has a new battery in it already. Jeep went through a little bit of a stint with battery problems too, and I would go out and live and say they were really good before that.
No doubt. And ultimately, I think what's critical here is batteries are not what they used to be.
Correct.
Okay, so we have to accept that as a whole, as consumers. The issue is we still need to hold manufacturers to a higher standard, and we have to have appropriate expectations to say, what is the product I'm buying versus the product that I am receiving, and how is my vehicle set up to respond to that?
Yes.
So our newest platform vehicles really need high full current voltage and charge, right? No bad cells, no diminished capacities of any way, shape, or form. And ultimately, the problem I ran into with the Delcos specifically is that they basically, they acted, they would have a surface charge or a superficial charge, but then they actually don't have enough reserve capacity or capacity in general to actually satisfy the Jeep's needs.
Yes, the Jeep's very needy.
Our new Jeeps are very needy. They are not the old school vehicles where you hit the starter and that's basically all the electrical charge they need.
Yes.
We have lots of needs now.
Yep, and we're kind of spoiled with the factory batteries. They do last a long time, but in my experience, when the factory battery decides it's done, she's done.
Well, and ultimately a
if that's
factory
on a
battery
stump or not.
Yeah, and
Wow, nice call out there, Neil.
And as far as factory batteries, they're almost twice the cost of our standard aftermarket options, right? And so here's the thing, folks, and ultimately we could actually spend an entire, time or talk, and maybe we will in the future, talking about batteries and battery technology. I'm just going to say it again loud and clear. As a brand, there are manufacturers who can do better. Just because it's a brand that Grandpa knew and liked does not mean that it is still a good quality brand. It does not mean that it is appropriate or sufficient to your application or by today's market standards. Don't cheap out on batteries. I'm sorry. I know people cannot always afford the best, but batteries and tires are one of those things where that's where you need to invest in your vehicle.
Will let you down otherwise.
Right. So, and I'll just give this last little tidbit. What if you're in a pinch and you need to do a battery replacement and you don't want to spring for the Optima from your box store? I never recommend purchasing a Optima or an Odyssey from your standard box stores. Mainly because
they don't have good logistics.
They don't have good logistics, and it's literally cheaper through dedicated providers like ourselves. Or your
shameless
local
plug,
or your local 4x4 place. You know what I mean? Whatever it might be, buy from them. They have better logistics, better pricing on those better quality brands. I'll be honest with you, and I'm going to give this plug out here. The Duralast Gold Series are among one of my more preferred economy batteries.
And I'll do a little critique. Every once in a while, Duralast will come out with a special little name on their batteries. They'll say it's a professional series or something like that. Just buy the gold.
Just buy the Gold Series. And that's perfectly fine in these situations. Now, in the end, will we put something, will we prefer an Optima or an Odyssey or
100%.
something like that?
Well, and
yes.
Speaking of the Optimas, Chuck is chiming in saying no problems with that Ultima you guys put in.
Yep.
And then just an extra plug on here. Joel says, missed marketing opportunity for SFJ. Dale is in Sweden without his fanny pack.
Going global with the
Joel.
fanny packs.
Sorry, not Joel.
Yeah, it's Joel.
Yes.
All right, folks. Well, been a fun one talking about our antiques. We've got some stuff coming up in the future. We want to hear from you about your first vehicles. We're going to start compiling that information. So it is valuable that you either hit us on our text only number or, and Jeff, and he'll compile that information for us to eventually reveal how we got into Jeeping, what were our first Jeeps, and what was your first vehicle in general? Because I think there could be fun in that.
Two-part series.
No doubt. Obviously, we're still working on compiling our guests for 2023, and we want to, continue to have people on, on air with us. So that's pretty cool. We'll be at the Dayton Off-Road Expo this weekend on Sunday. If you want to hook up with us, we definitely have some stuff to do there.
Look for the flannel.
Look for the flannel. We'll see, right?
We'll see.
Maybe we'll be in all different flannels.
Yes.
But,
that goes without saying. Does
Jeff will be in a sweater
Does
vest.
Jeff
Maybe I'll
have,
wear a suit and then carry the audio gear in a suit with a tool belt.
Does Jeff have flannels?
Does Jeff have flannels?
I-
That's a good question.
I don't have flannels.
Oh.
Kristen offered me to borrow hers. I'm like, I don't know about
His
that.
wife has flannels.
His wife has a flannel.
And on that note,
Oh, and on that note, Jeep family, next week, Jeep on.
Well,
Jeep
before we
on.
Jeep on, I want
oh.
to give a quick shout out to our Patreon
Oh, we
supporters.
should do
we
that.
should do
So thank you to Dan, Dale, Chip, Mark, Paul, Patrick, Kevin, Chuck. All of you are subscribers, top subscribers on our Patreon.
Yes.
We appreciate it.
Yes.
If you don't know about the Patreon account, go check it out. Lots of extra material.
help us get Jeff a flannel.
Help us get Jeff a flannel.
Wow, I didn't realize the Patreon budget was going to go for flannels now, but maybe that's a thing. I don't
didn't
know.
know it was necessary before now.
Oh, all right. Well, Dale says good show as usual, and I think that's it.
Are we allowed to stop now, producer?
Sure.
All right. Next week, Jeep on.
Keep on.
Jeep on.